Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about something that's literally all around you, but you probably never think about it: the rules that keep your home's electricity safe. We're diving into the National Electrical Code to figure out the core principles that stop overloads and, prevent fires. So let's just jump right in. Have you ever really stopped to think about what's stopping all the wiring in your house from just melting? I mean, there's a ton of power flowing through your walls. What's the secret system that manages all that energy without causing a total catastrophe? Well, the answer lies in this really fundamental idea from something called the National Electrical Code, the NEC for short. Think of it as the cardinal rule, the absolute bedrock of electrical safety in every single home. Okay, so first things first, we need to get our terms straight. What in the world is a branch circuit? Just think of it like a single road for electricity. It starts at your breaker box and runs out to a group of outlets, lights, or appliances. You've got one for your kitchen, one for the living room lights. You get the idea. And here it is, the rule itself, right from the source. The total load on a branch circuit shall not exceed the rating of the branch circuit. I know, it sounds almost too simple, right? But that's the beauty of it. It's so simple, but it's the basis for, well, everything else. So what happens if you ignore this rule? Well, sticking with that road analogy, if you cram too much traffic onto a small road, you get a gridlock, right? But with electricity, it's way worse. Too much load on a circuit, it's not a traffic jam, the wire literally heats up. And that's how you get fires. It's a huge deal. But, like any good rule, there are some really important exceptions. The code is actually pretty smart. It knows that not all electrical devices are created equal. And that brings us to our first special case, those big, powerful appliances with motors. Yeah, think about your refrigerator or your AC unit. When they first kick on, they're like a drag racer at the starting line. They need this massive burst of energy just to get going. It's way, way more power than they need to just hum along once they're running. So how does the code deal with that initial power surge? It builds in a safety margin. And that margin is a very specific number, 125%. What this means in the real world is that the code forces you to pretend that motor uses 25% more power than it actually does. You have to build in this extra buffer. Why? So the circuit can handle that huge initial kick of power without everything tripping or, worse, overheating. And we're not talking about some kind of crazy industrial machinery here. This rule applies to stuff you have in your house right now. Your air conditioner, your fridge and freezer, workshop tools, even your furnace. All those heavy hitters. Okay, so motors are one thing, but they're not the only special case. Think about how much lighting has changed in the last decade or so. Well, the electrical code has had to change right along with it, and that's created a whole new set of rules. This is a really critical difference in today's homes. Back in the day, with old-school incandescent bulbs, it was easy. You just added up the watts. Simple. But with modern LEDs, you can't do that anymore. See, an LED light isn't just a glowing wire. It's a little piece of electronic equipment. And here's the key. The thing that actually uses the power isn't the tiny little LED chip itself. It's the hardware that runs it, something called a driver. That's what the circuit really sees as the load. So you have to look at the amp rating of the entire fixture, not just the wattage of the bulb. It's a totally different way of thinking. All right, let's move on to the real beast, the undisputed heavyweight champion of power use in most homes, the kitchen. I mean, think about it. You've got so many high-powered things in there. How on earth does the code handle all of that? This is a genuine puzzle, right? If you just added up the maximum possible power of your oven, your cooktop, and maybe a microwave, the number would be astronomical. You'd need to search it bigger than what's practical for a normal house. So what's the trick? The solution is this really clever idea called a demand factor. Basically, the code gets realistic. It assumes, based on how people actually live, that you're not going to be running every single cooking appliance at full blast all at the exact same time. It just doesn't happen. And what's really interesting here is how it's quantified. The rule says that this demand factor idea applies to any cooking appliance that pulls more than 1.75 kilowatts. So for things like your electric range or a wall oven, electricians get to use this special, more realistic calculation. It lets them build a circuit that's safe, but also practical. The restaurant analogy is just perfect for this. The code is planning for the dinner rush, like, say, Thanksgiving dinner, when you've got a lot going on. But it's not planning for the completely impossible scenario where every single burner is on high, the oven is broiling, and the microwave is going, all at once, forever. It plans for a busy kitchen Not a crazy, unrealistic one. Okay, so we've looked at the big cardinal rule. We've talked about the special cases for motors and modern lights, and we've seen how the code smartly handles kitchens. So what's the big takeaway here? Why does any of this really matter?
Let's boil it down. 4 key things. 1. Never, ever exceed your circuit's rating. 2. Give those motors an extra 25% safety buffer. 3. For new lights, forget the watts, check the driver's amps. And 4. Kitchens are calculated for how you actually live, not some theoretical maximum. These are the core principles that keep you safe.
And at the end of the day, these aren't just a bunch of abstract rules in a dusty book. They are the invisible safety net that is literally built into the walls of your home. All of this is designed for one reason and one reason only, to protect you and your family. So the crucial thing to realize is that these codes aren't meant to be limitations. They're a system designed for your safety. And that kind of leaves you wondering, right? After learning all this, what part of your home's wiring are you going to look at a little bit differently now?